Manipulation is a form of social influence that uses indirect, underhanded, and half-truth to change people's perception and resulting behavior. Usually, the end goal is to advance the interest of a person who uses the manipulation. In many cases, manipulation happens at the expense of a person being manipulated, who may end up emotionally, mentally, or physically harmed or taking action against their own best interest. It's important to note that social influence is not really bad. One person can use manipulation techniques for the good of a person that are manipulating. For example, your family members or friends can use social influence and manipulation to do that or to get you to do something for your own good. The people you mean you well might manipulate you as a way to help you deal with certain challenges or to make you choose the right decision. Now, how the manipulation works. Several psychological theories explain how successful manipulation works. The first theory and perhaps the most universally accepted is the one proposed by the famous psychologist and a writer George Simon. He analyzed the concept of manipulation from the point of view of the manipulator and he came up with a pattern of behavior, the sum of every manipulation scenario. According to Simon, three main elements are involved in psychological manipulation. The first element is the manipulator approaches the target by concealing his or her aggressive intentions. Here, the manipulator seeks to endear himself to his target without revealing the fact that his ultimate plan is to manipulate him or her. The manipulator accomplishes this by modifying his behavior and presenting himself as the good, natural, and friendly individual you relate or who you relate well with the target. Secondly, the manipulator will take time to know the victim. The purpose of this is to understand the psychological weakness that the victim may have to figure out which manipulation plan will be the most effective when he ultimately decided to deploy them. Depending on the scenario, the complexity of the manipulation techniques, this stage may take anywhere between a few minutes to several years. For example, when a stranger targets you, he may take only a couple of minutes to size you up, but when your partner or colleagues seeks to manipulate you, he or she may spend more or even years trying to understand how your mind works. The success of the second stage depends on how well the first step is executed. If the manipulator successfully hides his intentions from you, he is in a better position to learn about your weaknesses because there is still some level of trust in him. He will use that trust to get you to let down your cards and to reveal your weaknesses to him. Thirdly, having collected enough information to act upon, the manipulator will deploy a manipulation technique on his choosing. For this to work, the manipulator needs to first show a sufficient level of truthfulness. This means that the manipulation technique chooses will depend on what the manipulator can tolerate. A manipulator with a cosine can try to use method that are less harmful to manipulate you. One that completely lack of conscience may use extremely methods to take advantage of you. Either way, manipulative people are willing to let harm be half or befall their victims, and to them, the outcome, which is usually in their favor, justifies the harm they cause. Simon manipulation theories teach us the general approach that manipulators use to get what they want from their victim. Still, it is also a point out something extremely important. Manipulation works not just because of the manipulator action, but also because of the reaction of the victims. If we were to look back at the third story or the third stage of manipulation that we have discussed earlier, we will notice that the manipulator or the manipulation can fall at any step of the victim case the manipulator intention. In the first step, the manipulator misrepresent himself to the victim. If the victim can see through the veils that the manipulator is wearing, the manipulation would not be successful. In the second step, the manipulator collects information about victim to learn about of his or her weaknesses. The victim can be able to stop the manipulation at any stage by treating the manipulator, preying nature with a bit of suspicion. In the third stage, the manipulator uses coercive and underhanded techniques to get what he wants from the victim. Even in this state, the victim may have certain choice on how to react to the manipulator mechanism. The point here is that when it's come to manipulation, it takes two or tango by understanding both the victims and the manipulator psychology. It is possible to figure out how you can avoid falling victims to other people manipulation. And it can also help you become more coincides so that you do not unknowingly use manipulation techniques on other people around you. Let's look at the weaknesses that manipulators like to exploit in their victims. The first and most perhaps weaknesses is that the need to please other. We all have this need to extend some extent. We seek to please the people in our lives and totally strangers. This is technically a positive quality that uses as coins exist in our society, but is it a weapon that can be used against you by the manipulators? Many of us are willing to endure certain level of discomfort just to make other people feel happy. We feel a certain sense of obligation towards one another, and that's just human nature. The closer we are to certain people, the greater the need to please them. For example, the need to please your friend is higher than the need to please a stranger. Manipulator understands this and they uses it against victims all the time. The manipulator wants to get something big out of you. They will first take a time to get closer to you, not just to get to your weaknesses, but also to increase a sense of obligation you feel towards you. Second weakness is the need for approval and acceptance. Again, as social beings, we all have an innate desire to feel accepted. We want people to love us, think of us as the member of their group, and choose us over other people. This feeling can be addictive and it can also give other people, especially manipulative ones, a lot of power over us. The vast majority of manipulation victims are people who have close personal relations with the manipulators. In other words, they have just an emotional need to gain the acceptance or approval of the manipulator. The remaining manipulation victims can be manipulated because they want to be a part of something, a group or a social class or etc. The third weakness that manipulator likes to exploit is what psychologists refer to as a amitophobia. This is a fear of negative emotions. To some extent, we are all afraid of negative emotion. We will do lots of things to avoid feeling angry, afraid, stressed, frustrated, and worried, etc. We want to lead a happy and fulfilled life, and anything that makes us feel bad is a threat to that sense of fulfillment. So, in many cases, we will do that. Manipulators, what if this serves to alleviate the bad feelings? Manipulators know this. They use negative emotions against us all the time. The fourth weaknesses is the lack of assertiveness. Assertiveness is a very rare quality. Even people who you may generally consider to be assertive are likely to cave in if manipulator pushes hard enough. Even when you are willing to stand your ground and to say no, manipulators can be very precise and in the end they can wear you out. The fifth weakness is a lack of a strong sense of identity. Having a strong sense of identity means having clear personal boundaries and understanding one's values. Unfortunately, these qualities are not so strong in most of us, leaving us open to the manipulations. Manipulators succeed by pushing our boundaries little by little, taking them broadly, and then taking control over our identities. Finally, an external locus of control, having a low level of self-reliance, are also key. The weaknesses that manipulators love to exploit. When you have an external locus of control, it means that your identity and yourself or the sense of self are external to you. It means you be yourself through other people's eyes. It means that you are externally motivated when you have a low self-reliance. It means you depend on other people for emotional stability and many things. It means that if support system in your life are taken away, you can easily find yourself leaning on the manipulators, which leaves you at his own mercy.